We are back with another live. We are going to be talking to Anissa Payne from NM Productions, but we're specifically going to be talking about a new venture which has just been launched, which is Pint-Sized Studios. So we're going to be talking a little bit about how they're adapting to the need of social first content. Welcome, 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 everyone joining. So if you just missed it, we're going to be talking to Anissa Payne from NM Productions, Pint-Sized Studio that has just been launched. And they've worked with the likes of Pepsi, Braun, Adidas, Range Rover. So they've worked with quite a few established brands. And we're going to be talking a little bit about how, the fact that they've launched, what they do, and also how they're integrating and adapting to the need of social first content. Let's just invite them in. Welcome, everybody. I'm actually quite excited to actually talk about this topic today because, as we know, we're seeing more and more social content actually be at the forefront of what we're all doing. So I'm excited to talk to Anissa. Ah, there we go. Amazing. And we've got Anissa on.
Technological issues.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello,
how you
Anissa.
doing?
It's good to. I'm doing well, and it's good to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
So we're gonna jump straight in, and I just want to ask, what is Pint-Sized Studios, and what do you guys do?
Okay, cool. So, obviously, I'm sure you guys are aware of NM Productions, which is our um, big shiny production company with all the bells and whistles. And Pint Size is basically a pint-sized version of NM Productions that was set off really off the back of, you know, people thinking that we were too big to handle these smaller, more nimble, more agile projects. I'm not really sure if you're aware of our setup, but we're a small little team anyway. And basically, we found that there was a lot of need for social first content, quick turnarounds. Things like mobilizing shoot crews for events, literally handing off the footage for it to go live within 24 hours. So this is where Pint Size was born from. It's also come off the back of our origins started in like editorial productions, still productions, small like three-man team shoot productions, which have their challenges and benefits in their own respects. But it's obviously something that we know how to do. That's where we started. And yeah, it's a bit of a call to action, a bit of a reminder to clients and creatives and photographers, directors, everything, that it doesn't have to be a big mega budget, for us to still deliver to the same quality and standards. So that's where it's kind of come from.
Mad. Okay, and it's quite interesting you mentioned that because we were just I was sort of speaking just a bit about kind of how the industry is kind of changing in the sense of that there is that need for social first content. Like,
Mm.
what would you say kind of motivated and kind of put the wheels in turning where you were like, okay, guys, we need to like make kind of that smaller sort of
Yeah.
offshoot.
I mean, it's like anything in life, right? You've constantly got to adapt to survive. It's not just advertising. I mean, it's no secret. It's a challenging space, both for advertising and film. Things are changing, things are evolving, budgets are getting tighter. You know, all the boring doom and gloom stuff that we're all aware of, and you know, it's par for the course. You know, and we can all sit and complain about it. But I think, you know, we decided there was a need to pivot and a need to have and offer a different kind of approach to how we're working. So, you know, we still work on those big £1 million plus TVCs that need over 150 crew in global locations and da da da. But there's also a need for content where we send out a self-shooting DOP editor who can go and capture it with his little FX6 or whatever, or her little FX6, and get it done really. So yeah, and obviously, again, it's no secret. It's not just a standalone TVC or a standalone still shoot. It's a TVC with TikTok, with Instagram content, with a big billboard campaign, and you have a celebrity, and you have 5.2 seconds to shoot it all.
Mm,
So you know, and we were finding when we were doing our bigger productions as well is they were, you know, clients were bringing in another production company to handle social, another production company to handle stills. It gets messy, it gets convoluted, it costs a lot more. Not everybody's talking to each other that needs to be talking to each other, no matter how much we all try, and then ultimately something suffers. So, um, you know, I hope with Pint Size and NM they can work together, but also, you know, work as standalone entities and kind of be a one-stop shop ultimately for, as I said, directors, creatives, clients, brands, the works.
yeah, because what I understand, it's like you guys literally do the end to end. So even the conceptualizing of the concepts, the scripting, all of that stuff, right the way to the end.
Yeah, exactly. I won't kind of say that we do it in-house ourselves, but we obviously do work with a trusted network of freelancers. Our model has always been this really scalable model. You know, our roster is a non-traditional roster. So we kind of find the right people for the right briefs. And I think that's the best way to kind of approach things in this day and age because, you know, not everybody's right for everything. And I think being able to call on this global network of people to facilitate the projects puts you in a much better stead in this like competitive landscape at the minute.
So I wanted to ask, actually, that's quite interesting because I wanted to sort of pick on the point that you mentioned about sort of like the directors that you work with and the roster. How is it you guys like work with directors now with Pint Size Studios? Like, what does that kind of setup look like now?
So again, it's the same. It's a pretty similar model, to be honest with you. It's still that freelance, right person for the right project. And obviously, you know, we've been fortunate enough to be quite busy at the minute. I just got back off a stint in the Middle East and Taiwan, followed by a project in London. But where we can, we're actively meeting people all the time. We want to see what people are doing. We actually, you know, we don't always get time to respond, but we want you to email us and we want you to keep us updated. So our roster and our approach to directors is still hit us up. We do our research. We meet people, and again, you know, it goes back to as I said, it's the right people for the right job. And you know, I know Shiny's always been about new directors, underrepresented talent, you know, but there is the legwork that you need to put in yourself with that, which is just knocking on doors and banging down doors because like anything in life, it's competitive, and you have to shout to be heard, and you have to shout and push your way through that door. And you know, I always encourage people send an email, tell me what you've been doing. Even if I don't reply for 10, you're going to hit my inbox at one point, and I'm going to be like, oh, this is perfect. This is the right time. And as I said, I think given the way that we approach directors, you know, we're a good positioning for people who don't have representation, because we're not dedicated to a contracted roster.
Oh, amazing. Okay, because then I suppose also with that as well, like especially with the relationship that, you know, for example, any new directors watching, that they could build with you, especially now with with Pint Size Studios working on sort of more smaller shoots, and then kind of potentially working with NM in that kind of way. So there's that possibility of like developing a relationship there with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely, right. It's you know, your work speaks for itself, but you also want people to be able to vouch for you. And likewise, I want to vouch for you, knowing that, you know, I'm confident in your abilities to deliver. And I think, you know, there's a lot to be said. And, you know, some of our bigger campaigns we've gotten off of small, low budget shoots showing that we can do a lot with a small amount of money, and we can be versatile and adaptable and think outside the box in order to still deliver to a high standard. And I think when we see directors, photographers, DPs kind of working in that same way, we're like, if you did something with nothing, just think what you're going to do with something. So, yeah, certainly, I think it's, you've always got to look at opportunities that come through the door and think long term.
Mm. I would say because I'm quite interested in the way that essentially Pint Size is kind of focusing on the social first content. What would you, because a lot of the filmmakers that potentially are watching are probably trained more in the traditional background and are now having to like
Yeah,
adapt how they're kind of adapting to this new world of social.
yeah.
How would you say from, I guess, a from the studio standpoint of potentially hiring the directors, how would you say that they should be presenting their work, or maybe even how they should reach out, or how they should just essentially present themselves so they can make themselves more attractive to potentially working with bite-sized studios?
Yeah. So good question. I think obviously craft in itself and the visuals speak for themselves. I think what's important is, people go, oh, if you can do a TVC, you can do social. I don't necessarily think that's right or correct. I know a
Mm,
lot of big TVC directors who struggle to get, how am I going to frame it for 916? And, you know, obviously with things like broadcast, you have more time to tell a story. You might get 30 to 60 seconds. Whereas things that live on social, you think, we're all like this relentlessly, right? It has to capture your attention for you to want to stop within the first 1 to 2 seconds. So I think if you're working on personal projects, if you don't get the opportunity necessarily in a commercial realm, but if you're working on personal projects, I would recommend trying to build a bit of a personal portfolio whereby you can showcase, how to format, how to position, that you can get the hook within the first couple of seconds. I think as well, obviously, social does accommodate this kind of long form storytelling, but again, it's episodic. So, you know, you might subscribe to something and be like, okay, I'm going to watch it for a minute on social. And then you may choose to venture out off of that onto YouTube or Vimeo or whatever. Or you sit and you wait for the next drop on Instagram that's coming in the next week, or TikTok, or whatever it might be. So I think those are the things from a creative approach. It's being able to showcase that you can make things engaging that are short and snappy, that you can capture the attention in the first couple of seconds, that you know how to frame, not only for, the social formatting of 916, but framing the composition wise of knowing that client might whack a big logo or a big super somewhere. So you don't want it across someone's face because you've done it so tightly cropped. And it's kind of knowing how to do that and approach that. And again, we've worked on projects where we've worked with really incredible directors, and it's been for social content. And I even see it in the storyboarding phase. It's like 60 storyboard frames. It's like, you're like, oh my god, like a 15-second story. Like, this ain't gonna fit.
mm.
And you have to, it is about craft, but your approach to craft needs to shift a little bit to accommodate social sometimes. And it's not necessarily by all being glossy and super hi-fi. I think a lot of people probably engage in stuff that's a lot more lo-fi and realistic. I still think there is space for that, especially in this current day and age with AI and everything shifting. I think, I certainly appreciate something that looks well shot, but not necessarily shot on anamorphic lenses on like the latest ARRI with a big techno crane, something that you've done yourself that looks quality, that tells a beautiful story. I think that's how you're gonna position yourself in not only with production companies, but with brands as well.
I think it's so interesting you saying that because I think a lot of I think a lot of traditional like filmmakers need to hear that, because I think a lot of directors kind of probably got into directing was like, I want to make a huge big budget like commercial,
Yeah.
and it's like, I think one thing social has sort of hammered home is like, you need to have the love of
Yeah.
storytelling. It's not like it really, and it's so funny because I'd say back in the day, but I'm not that old, but when people used to say, oh, you've got an iPhone, so go out and film something, and it really is that now. It really is. No, you have an iPhone. That is enough.
Yeah.
That is potentially the
Yeah.
standard. So I think it's,
It
yeah.
is true, and it's ultimately it is about storytelling. I mean, I can't claim to be creative by any way, shape, or form. But you know, obviously working very closely with creatives, we have a different approach to things. Theirs is all about the love of the craft and the storytelling and what the final end product is. And you know, if that means shooting it on an iPhone, you still will hopefully get an end result if you know how to use that iPhone properly. I mean, there's obviously cinematic elements of using certain lenses. I know DPs will be like, "What are you talking about?" But you know, everything has its limitations, and you have to make the best of what you've got sometimes. And I think that's always the most important thing. If you're going to go into a project and want to make it your own, you should always give it the best, even if it means they're telling you you have to shoot on an iPhone. If you're committed to it, make it the best that you're going to make it. Because next time they come around, they might decide that they have a lot more money and they want you to shoot on those beautiful lenses. And if you can show them what you can do at that stage, I think that that always opens up a lot more doors as well.
I completely agree. I just want to say to the chat, anyone who's watching, feel free to like throw in some questions if you have any, because rare opportunity that we have Anissa with us. So if you've got any questions, please, please, please do not feel afraid to ask any questions. Um, in terms of how anyone wants to be, if anyone's like watching and it's like, how do I get involved with Pintsized Studios? How do they? What's the best way to contact you?
Just ping us an email. I'm going to be completely honest. I probably shouldn't tell people this, but it all comes into me anyway. So I see everything on the general email account. And then I siphon it off out to the team. The team is very heavily involved when we do pitches. Everybody puts their hat in the ring to make suggestions. So as I said, share new work, email it over to us. When we do have capacity, we do kind of like open days in our office for people to come in, present their work. We've been a little bit busy, you know, fortunately enough, but usually we host some events throughout the year. We're hosting a sip and paint in September. A little bit of wine, a little bit of painting. So we're going to be sending out an open invite for that. But yeah, just hammer us an email, honestly. And I think, as I said, you're your biggest cheerleader, so you gotta keep on at it, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Anissa.
No way.
I'm just gonna see if we're getting any questions. How important do you think it is for new directors to also become creators on social platforms? That's a really good question, actually.
That is a good question, you know, and I'm divided on that one, if I'm honest
Really?
with you. I am. I still do think the social platforms personally, and like, you know, I'm only 31, so I also can't say back in the day. But there is an old and you know, a little old person living inside of me where I'm like, you know, it's your portfolio. It's a difference to like a photographer going out with a book and taking it around. Like Instagram is your portfolio now. So I still think it should be the films that you're making, the photos that you're
Mm,
taking, rather than like, you know, being a like if that's the way the question's being asked, whether it's like being an Instagram creator or a TikTok creator in the
mm.
sense of an influencer, if that was a question. Was that the question?
I think it's
Am I answering this wrong?
Yeah, no, I think it is. It's like how important it is it to because and I think that is a good question because I think a lot of directors are like, well, I'm a director. I don't want to be, a social
Yeah,
media person, but it's like it's now becoming part of the role and it's but at the end of the day, you've
yeah,
always had to kind of like, for example, sell yourself.
yeah.
So it's just another way of selling yourself, essentially.
It is, but I think you have to be that way inclined as well,
Mm,
right? I think you have to be true to yourself with anything in life. And I get, you know, and I said this at the start, you've got to adapt to survive. So if you feel that
mm.
adapting to surviving is something that you can do, and then go for it. It's never a bad thing. It's not something I could personally do myself. So I think, yeah, this my answer would be no, I wouldn't do it. I'd say stay true to your craft and your work. However, that's me. If you think it's going to put you in a better stead, go for it. I wouldn't necessarily hire you because I see you as being a creator in that respect. I would hire you personally based on craft and who you are as a human being. For me, and for NM and for Pint Size, with anything, your work can be amazing, but you got to be a cool person as well. You got to be
Mm.
nice, you got to be fair, you got to be good to work with. And I think those for me are the key foundations when I'm hiring.
That's a good, actually, it's an interesting point because I wanted to then ask, but it is, I guess, in this case, for them to kind of come up on your radar, socials wouldn't hurt.
No, so having social media presence doesn't hurt.
Mm,
But I think that's more social media presence in the stage of keeping your portfolio up to date, just the same as keeping your
right.
website up to date. I see a lot of directors and photographers who, do you know what, already established in their own right, who don't keep their websites up to date and relevant and fresh in
Mm,
their socials. And I think that's a dangerous game because, like anything in this world, we go in waves, right? You may be flavor of the month this week, but next week you don't know what's going to happen. And I think,
mm,
it's important to keep yourself relevant because, and to show us that you're working, you're practically doing stuff. And that doesn't mean earning money and pulling in the big bucks on commercial. That might
mm.
mean going out and filming some social content on your phone and making something cool for your website, putting it on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it might be, um, and keeping that fresh and relevant. But if I look at your website and see you haven't updated it since 1999, I'm going to be like, oh my God, they're not working. And you might be the busiest person in the world, but that would be my knee jerk. So yes, then that question is keeping an online presence relevant, I think is
Well,
important.
that's such a good point because I think that's I think that's a lot of
Yeah.
filmmakers. And I think it's interesting you say that because it's almost kind of what you're not communicating communicate something. Like if
Yeah.
you, as you just said, like if you're not updating your portfolio, it comes across like, well, your last project was only relevant 5 years ago, so does that mean that you've
And
stopped
why are you not
caring?
working? And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily about like, and that's not, not why you're not working in the sense of you're not good enough. That's not it. My knee jerk is always, why are you not working? What's happened?
Yes, yeah.
Especially with really big people, I'm like, oh God, you were a pain on the last job. If you
Mm,
stopped working, you were painful. Whereas, everything has its circumstances. People might be taking a hiatus, a sabbatical, whatever it might be. Um, but I think, if you want to stay relevant in the space, I do think some sort of social presence, true to yourself, true to what works for
mm,
you, um, is important, And I think posting every now and then, we do it all the time. I may shoot myself in the foot. I can't remember how often we post, but I think we send out newsletters every 2 weeks, right?
nice.
Send out newsletters every 2 weeks, so we're not too annoying, but we're still like, we're here recycling old content. It might be that there's a cut down version of something that you shot prior and you
Mm.
last told me about it 6 months ago. You can use it 6 months later in a different format and it's not repetitive. It's just keeping things relevant.
But then also
Take them
keeping people in them in their mind. So keeping you in their mind
a
because
hundred
then
percent because you meet people every day, right? You go in and see these creatives or these heads of productions in these big agencies. I mean, I went into a big agency once where I think the head of production had 12 meetings prior to mine because I saw it on the sign-in sheet. She's seen 12 of us in one day. How are we staying relevant in her mind? And it's like you can have a great meeting, you can have great rapport, but then someone else might come in 2 days later and they may vibe with them. So
mm,
it is about this constant presence in people's minds and then someone going, oh my God, I remember, and we had that conversation. So yeah, don't post annoyingly, don't be that annoying
mm,
person, post every
mm,
day, but posting it like once a week, once every 2 weeks, and
mm.
recycle something from further down, especially if you're a photographer, right? I mean, you shoot a series, or if you're a director, do cut downs, do variations of something. If you have the ability to edit, which I think is also important, I will say, is with the social content, is a director who has the editing capabilities, I think, or a self-shooting director is becoming quite invaluable with a quick turnaround content.
Really?
Yes, like we're having people go out on jobs where they're shooting and either they bring an editor with them that then takes over and edits, or the next day they're editing it ready to throw it back out the door. Especially for things like live events, we did a lot with a sports event about a year ago, and the stuff was just like that. It's happening, it's going out, it's happening, it's going out. So I think, if you are quiet and you are interested in learning a new skill, I think editing, especially with the tools that we've got in this day and age, is never a bad thing, even if that helps you in putting together a rough cut before you hand it off to an editor to give a bit of guidance on what you want to see this as. Yeah.
I think that's I think that's amazing advice, and I just want to like reiterate that, which is essentially is any director watching, any creative watching, please make sure you're updating your reels, your website, you're posting regularly. Don't do the bare minimum because so many of us are like, oh well, I've done this, so then yeah, and it's like it's not a given. You have to remind people why you're good. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna always have to do that,
100%.
and
A new
why.
business is a hard job. Like it's a hard job for anyone, even in an established, like massive production house. it's hard. You have to keep relevant, and somebody is going to see something and go, oh my God, that's amazing. And
Mm.
that's where you're going to go from. And, it's so funny because I've talked to directors, photographers, creatives, and they hate it. They hate updating their websites. They're like,
Mm.
I don't want to be doing this. I want to be making stuff. And
But
it's like,
in order to make the stuff, you need to be updating.
yeah,
That is how you start. You like
yeah.
it. It's so funny because I'm saying this to myself, and I'm also saying this to the people that know that I know they need to hear it
Update
multiple
your
times. That
website.
literally, um, yeah. So then, just going down the list, update your websites. Because I like to do a wrap up list of the things that we need to do as
Yeah.
homework. If we want to work with entities like Pintsized Studios, update your website. Make sure you're reaching out, keeping your content relevant, and also adapting bits of it to be more socially ready. So that, as you said, it could even be re-editing stuff to fit a social format, for example, just so that if anyone, for example, like Pint Size Studio comes along and then says, "Oh, I've seen that you've done content that looks like it's in a social format," even though it could have
Yeah.
been, for example, a TVC high production commercial, you've got the cut down because you can edit, which is a valuable skill. So you're now more valuable.
Exactly. It all feeds into itself. And like, let's be honest, people want to see exactly what it is that they're looking for, even though they don't admit that, right?
Mm,
It's you want to look at something and go, oh, well, I know they can do it because they've done it there.
mm,
And that's where you get your confidence from. If I turned around to you and said, I can actually make you a TVC myself single-handedly, you go, no, you couldn't because you have all these people there. You don't know that. I might be able to.
mm.
That's why people want to see it, and they want to see that you've done it yourself and you've had the capability to do it yourself, and then that inspires them with confidence, and then the rest comes. It opens like a dialogue and you go from there. Then you can fake it till you make it. As long as you deliver on the end, then that's the most important thing.
I think that's the best point to end on because I think that well, actually, what I would say is, what is any advice, like, could be anything, to any creatives or directors that you would just throwing out there as a last sort of message.
My last message would be, we're very lucky to be working in this industry, whether you're a producer, who's handling the money and the logistics and making sure they're all safe, fed, and watered, or whether you're a creative making things because that's what you've chosen to do. I hope it pays your way, and I hope it keeps you, your cup filled both creatively and, with a roof over your head. And I think it's important with everything going on in the world and everything happening right now to take a step back, have a bit of perspective, and be like, I am lucky and I should be grateful because, not to get into doom and gloom thing, we all know what's going on in the world. And it's so amazing that you have this ability to create and tell stories and connect people. And, if your storytelling resonates with someone or gives people a sense of purpose, that's incredible. And you're so lucky to do that. So I think persevere if it's your true passion. You will get knocked back, you will get knocked down, you'll feel like crap sometimes and think, I want to give it all up. And that's the point where you have to pick yourself back up and just carry on and plow forward. Because that's the nature of the beast, that's the nature of life. And I think that is ultimately my advice to everyone. Just keep moving forward, one foot in front of the other, keep doing what you love, be grateful that you're able to do what you love, and just remember the bigger picture. Was
That
that short
was
enough?
beautiful. No, I needed a pause because that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Anissa.
No worries.
Where can the people find you on socials, on different platforms? Where can they find you and Pint Size
So
Studios?
you can find me on Anissa Payne. We have NM Productions, NM underscore productions underscore, because somebody stole it without the underscore at the end. And Pint Size Studios is Pint Size Studios, I think. It's a recent one. But my team is watching and they will drop it in the chat now, won't you, Courtney and Jada, so that people know where to find them all.
Amazing. Thank you so
No,
much for just dropping, especially the gem at the end, but also dropping the gems throughout this
no
chat.
worries.
Thank you so much. And to anyone watching, this will be available on the Shiny platform and also on the Shiny Instagram. And we'll be doing these, aiming every week, but we'll be doing these quite regularly. Oh, it's there. Oh, at Pint Size Studios
There you go.
underscore studios.
Ah, there you go.
So check them out. And thank you so much and take care.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Yeah,
Bye
bye.
bye.